Okay, so settle. We're live. We're in for realsies. Okay, so are we unmuted? Cool. We're live. You should be listening. Your phone should be away. I need your attention. Not for long. In fact, the first thing we're going to talk about is listening. So the way I have today set up is we're going to just kind of talk about how to improve small talk. The same way that email is a necessary evil, there's parts of conversing, parts of meeting people, talking to strangers, things like that, that are just ways that you have to participate in the future. You don't have to do it every day. You don't have to do it all the time, but I have some tips that I've learned to make it easier, and as well as some links to help you guys get more into it. So after we talk about active versus passive listening, which is a good thing that you can apply to all your classes and especially to conversations, we're going to talk about some small talk. I have some small talk starter conversations and some extra resources that you are aware of. Again, it's one of those things that could be kind of a, yeah, duh, obviously, but there's also an aspect of it that maybe you hadn't considered, or maybe something that you could improve upon. And then they also have something that I've picked up just as an adult talking to randos and to strangers. There's a specific sort of, not hack exactly, that's why hacks is in quotes, but a routine that you can do that will improve your conversation skills just really easily too. And it's something to try outside of class. Now, this is the part where I really need you guys to tune in. I'm going to read this verbatim so that you all hear me, and it is on the Zoom room as well. On Thursday, we will delve into subjects relating to communication or communicating regarding personal privileges, biases, and societal norms that create disproportionate gaps between humans of many distinctions. This could be an uncomfortable class period for you, as you may learn that you have participated in or been a member of communities that continue these norms. However, it is still important to recognize these things and to understand how they affect communications. If this is something you are concerned with, and this is not me reading, this is me talking now. If this is something you are concerned with, please send me a Canvas message. Those are always confidential. I will never share those. Or you can chat with me after class today. This is not personal. The effects of these conversations, the effects of these awarenesses are not a personal attack from me to you. It's not the goal. Neither are they a personal attack from other people to you or from you. It's just something that you need to be aware of. It's not personal. This is something that will make you ready for the future. So please be patient and understanding with yourself and other classmates. It's going to be fine. I just want to have a disclaimer when you come in on Thursday. We're going to be talking about some things that could be considered pretty heavy. So our goal for the day is to learn, become familiar with ways to improve conversations, listening, and communications, since we're focusing on our professional communications sort of vibe. Okay, so let's talk about active versus passive listening. Has anybody heard those terms before? Raise your hands. 2, 3, 5, handful. Cool. Nice. That is less than half. So let me pull up. Where did my thing go? If we look at your thread for the day, there's this link right here that talks about active versus passive listening. So active listening is exactly what it sounds like, where your body language and the fact that you're listening to what the person is saying communicates to them that you're dialed in. So for example, not waiting for your turn to talk is, wait, sorry, that was confusing. Waiting for your turn to talk is not active listening. Oh, somebody's got their sound on. Let me fix that real quick. That should be, okay, anyway. So active listening, I'm not gonna read this whole thing because I know you understand how to read. But not all listening is made equal. Passive listening is basically just hearing. So for example, right now, if you're doing something else, if you're having a side conversation, if your attention is divided elsewhere, you are not actively listening to me. I'm not upset about that, but it is something that you need to understand is an important distinction. Active listening comes from body language and from intention. Active listening is when you turn your core, your belly button, towards the person who's talking, and you actually hear what they have to say and interpret it and analyze it. There's a whole psychological set of steps that we won't get into exactly. But understanding that active listening, especially to your teachers, because we are saying things that are important, is usually coming from body language. So I can tell when you're looking at me, you're not distracted by something else, you're actively listening to what I have to say. So it's an action. It takes energy. It is something that you have to take breaks from, active listening, which is why it's something that's important to know when to do. When someone is sharing something really personal with you, or you're trying to get something done, or something is needing to happen. If you're trying to learn something, for example, those are all great instances where you need to be actively listening. Because it's one of those things where it's not your entire day. I'm not going to be talking to you the entire day. Just for this little bit of time, I need your attention so that you actually internalize it and start to recognize it. A lot of being future ready is looking for patterns and seeing them occur over and over again, right? A lot of things that we can teach you in school is great information. There's a distinction between something called hard skills and soft skills, but it's not 100% applicable to everyone's life right outside of college or right outside of high school or wherever you decide to go. There's things that just kind of happen. There's a flow of adulting, and it's something that you have to experience. And by active listening, it makes those things a little bit easier, especially when I'm talking about, hi, good morning. We're in the Zoom room talking about listening. Thank you. And I'll wrap this up real quick because I know it does take energy. Just understand that when I share stuff with you guys, it's not because I like hearing myself talk. I do like doing that, but that's not the reason why I teach. It's about, engaging in a conversation, being there, being present. And you can do this in class by when your teacher is actually giving the lecture, listening to what they have to say and creating your own, associations and relationships and turning it into your own interpretation of what the person's saying. That's active listening. Passive listening is basically just hearing. It's waiting for your turn to talk. It's not understanding what the person's trying to get at. It's an important thing, especially in personal relationships, professional relationships, in a lot of aspects of life. Listening will give you a ton of perspective, especially when we get to Thursday, when we hear from different perspectives that maybe you've not been exposed to yet. Anyway, because active listening takes conscious effort, it is something that is part of a conversation. It's two-sided. When you're not active listening, you're actively speaking. You're sharing your version, not your version, but your interpretation, making sure that you're clear for understanding. You're both kind of on the same page. Goes back and forth. It's an equal amount of effort when you're both active listening. And it is something that's important just because you want to actually, our time on this earth is limited, so you want to take the most advantage of it as possible. You can read through this in more detail if you'd like, but the biggest thing that I want you guys to know, and I'm sorry, I do say that a lot, I'm trying to break that habit. Active listening takes energy, but it pays off. Actually hear and understand what the person is saying to you, because that's what you would expect them to do to you, right? Golden rule, do what you, or I forgot how it goes exactly, but put out what you want to get back. Put the energy out that you want returned, and it will happen. So, thank you for active listening. You guys were quiet, you guys were in, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So I know that you understand this, but if you want some more details on it, there is a link right here that we could talk about in more detail. But active listening is something that's typically reserved for a more professional instance, like a classroom, or something that's a little bit more serious, something that you definitely want to be listening to what the other person is saying. To get to that point, oops, that's not what I wanted. There's a small talk stage. This is your introductory stage. This is a little bit lighter than what I've been talking about so far. Small talk is a necessary evil, and I find a lot of the times people frustrated by it, myself included, because it feels like you're spending energy on something that goes nowhere, quote unquote. It's not true. It does go somewhere. It leads to those active conversations, those really engaging and enlightening relationships you can build with people, but you got to get there first. You can't jump straight, you learn to drive. You don't just jump in a car and see what happens. I mean, you could, but imagine how that would end up. So this link right here, just 7 ways to get better at small talk. And it's, instead of focusing on, these are some really interesting links, or not links, but tips, like this one especially. Don't linger too long on low priority topics, okay? I mentioned during the email day yesterday that when you send an email, you need to know your audience, right? You need to be aware of who you're talking to, whether that's your boss or your colleague, and that's going to change the way that you talk about things. By lingering on these low priority topics, that's where the dissatisfaction of small talk comes from. That's where it's like, ugh, groan. We're talking about the weather, right? But if you're talking about the weather to someone who loves the weather, like a meteorologist or some type of scientist who studies climate, you're going to get a more engaging conversation. That's that knowing your audience aspect, is being aware of what, no, it's, okay, let me pause this. Just being aware of who you're talking to and how that can open doors into more detailed conversations with you. And on the same topic of small talk, it is very easy to open a door to conversation. This leads into my next tip on the agenda, by starting with unique forms of personal expression. This is something that I bring up and include in specificity because it's something that you need to be careful of. Saying you have beautiful eyes, this is something that the example is here, versus complimenting an accessory of theirs will get you two different results. Hi, good morning. There's levels, right, with small talk, because it's that introductory conversation to somebody. It's laying some groundwork that the conversation could go deeper, or we could leave it at this. And we enjoyed being humans together for a short amount of time. But when you compliment something unique, you want to be aware that you don't want to come off creepy, or you don't want to come off in the wrong way. To remedy this, just as a tip for something to be that I've experienced, you always want to start with an accessory of some kind, because typically the core of your outfit that you're wearing, people can feel like you're looking at them in a way that you're like sizing them up, you know, checking them out. It can get a little uncomfortable sometimes. But accessories, bracelets, watches, piercings, tattoos, things that aren't like the key pieces of shirt and pants or shirt and skirt and whatever. I consider shoes accessories because that's a good form of expression. By commenting on those things, kind of external, they're removed from the core pieces, that opens you up to a lot more interesting conversations. Like, for example, if you like somebody's piercings or their bracelet or their necklace that they're wearing, that is less pressure on them because you're not focusing on an aspect of their body, like their eyes or their hair specifically, or their main clothes, like the shirt or the pants, right? Just something to keep in mind. Start with accessories when you're talking about small talk, and then kind of work your way, if it works together, go deeper into, like, if they're wearing a band shirt, for example, or they have a really cool pair of like patchwork jeans, you know, you can go into further details. And that's a lot of this through line with this communication thing that I'm trying to have with you guys, is that we start general to kind of feel out how the other person is feeling, and then you guys can work your way into the more specific details. Conversing is a lot like dancing, actually, where you have to offer, and then they take your offer, and then you go from there. You work together, right? It's a flow. It should be equal parts. And that's why active listening is especially important, because you want to give somebody the energy and the space that they deserve to exist. I sound a little preachy. I don't mean to be like, you have to do this and, you know, you have to talk to everybody. That's not true. I'm just wanting you guys to be aware of the things that I've noticed as an adult, things that have helped, things that have gotten me far, right? And then the last little thing on this tip that I'll focus on, we'll do 3 out of the 7. You want to skip these stuff that maybe not everybody wants to talk about. Typically marriage, kids, and work. Because everybody's asking about work. It's always the first starting question. Marriage could be a sensitive topic. Kids could also be a sensitive topic. It's just directions that you maybe want to avoid. So all this talking is me kind of thinking, like, you might be wondering, what's the point? These are just tips. I'm not really giving you alternatives to these examples. The point is, by slowly, in very small increments, changing the way that you small talk, you're going to surprise the person in a good way. And they're going to be a lot more interested in talking more. And small talk is important, especially when you work on a group project. Like, there are teachers in this building who our only similarity is that we work at the same school. I still have to work with those other teachers. It's not in a bad way. It's not in an avoiding way. But by knowing these small talk tips, you can build that relationship and improve your collaboration in a workspace kind of lens. It's little small things that you can make, little tiny adjustments that you can make to alter the idea that small talk is a chore because there is a lot of beauty in it. It gets you to the door to more deeper conversations, and it helps you collaborate with your workforce sort of situation. So these are really good tips. If you have more questions, I think I have today in mind to like start with information, and then we'll all just kind of chat as I walk around. I don't know. We're trying stuff. But this is a great way that improving your small talk and the why is an important thing of being future ready and being an adult. And then this next part that I have that I've mentioned kind of a few times is that it opens the door to some deeper stuff. And then here's another link that if what I'm saying is not making sense, or you don't agree with what I'm saying, which is totally fine, these have just starter questions that you can kind of keep in your back pocket. Just talking more about how you can small talk. Again, it's very general information, but the valuable piece of these is that some of them have these starter questions right here. And these are going to open those doors to more engaging conversations that don't kind of feel that stagnant and like, what did we talk about? We just spent 5 minutes saying nothing, right? Another thing, one last thing that I want to mention about small talk is service professionals. If you go into a service profession like baristaing, waiting, even stuff like automotive is technically customer service forward. There's a lot of things, retail, that are customer service adjacent, where you're going to be doing a lot of small talk. There's two approaches if that's going to be your future for the time being, or you enjoy those services. If you go to restaurants, you're going to engage with these people. They're having a lot of the same conversations every day. You're having a lot of the same conversations every day. If you mix it up, you're going to break that routine for them in a refreshing way. Not to say that service workers are performers that you get to mess around with. That's not my goal at all. But having been a service worker, having 100 different 100 of the same conversations every day, it's refreshing to get that cycle broken. And this is important topics that you can bring up that kind of break that flow a little bit. And we're all humans. We're all doing the same things. There's all things that we accept and just kind of participate in because we have to. This just makes things a little bit more interesting, a little bit more different, Anyway, hopefully I'm making sense and not just kind of rambling up here. And then the last thing I want to talk about briefly are these conversation hacks, specifically this cycle of observation and then expansion. This is once you've begun the small talk, you're vibing with this other person or this multiple other people that you're talking to. This cycle, repeating these two steps, will naturally make that conversation flow in a really exciting way. You start with an observation. That can be an observation about something they've said, something they've experienced, something you both experienced, like if you went to a movie or a show or you work the same job. An observation is pretty empirical, pretty objective, right? The expansion part is where the conversation happens. So you make an observation and then you build on that observation. Like, for example, I walk up to somebody and I really like their shoes. I go, hey, I love your shoes. I love this specific part about the design. That's what makes it an observation, is you give them something specific. That opens the door for the person to go, yeah, I got them at these, or I like this about them, da, 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 da. Then comes the expansion half. The expansion half is where you go, okay, so why do you like these kind of things? It gives you the opportunity to ask an open-ended question where you go, okay, that's awesome. Did you know about this? Or where did you learn how to do that, right? And then they'll tell you, and then there's a new cycle that's concluded where you can make another observation and another expansion. And this is how the conversation begins happening. This is especially useful if you're trying to make friends, because as an adult, it is seemingly impossible to make friends. But I've started doing these two steps, and I've gotten closer to strangers that could become friends by doing these two things. So this is something to try outside of class, the observation expansion routine habit, right? This is something that if you want to try it today, you can try with me, and I'll give you some examples and we can break it down. Okay? Does anybody have any questions on that? This is kind of an abstract sort of lesson. It's one of those things that I'm more giving you tips on than it's something that we actually are doing. Does this make sense? Perfect. All right. So that's the information I have to share with you. going to process the Zoom room real fast, and any other links that I find on this, these topics that you're interested in, I will put in the agenda. But in the meantime, read through some of the small talk topics and see which ones you like, see which ones you don't like. Kind of experiment a little bit. Try this observation expansion system. If you don't want to try it with your seat partners, you can try it with me. I'm an open book. I got a lot of good stories. And I can help you practice this, so it makes more sense when you are outside of my classroom. Perfect. Thank you guys for listening. That's all I really needed. Let's practice this a little bit. Read through some of these. Remember, on Thursday, we'll be discussing some more sensitive topics. So just be aware of that. It's not personal. It's part of life. Okay. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.